Even though Clemson and Alabama are not historical rivals, they do at times seem like arch rivals in college football. Typically, they're going after the same recruits. For a while, they were always facing each other in the college football playoff, and at times, some believe that Saban and Dabo were the two top coaches in the game. It's pretty rare that we see a guy transfer from Clemson to Alabama or Bama to Clemson, but one former Alabama player has since transferred to the Tigers, and based on his backstory, this would seem to be unthinkable. In today's video, we're going to talk about this player, go through his career, and ultimately why he is going to Clemson. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more college football content. Leave a like if you want to support today's video. Let me know what player, topic, team, or situation I can cover next. And now, let's get started. You're probably wondering who the subject of today's video is, and it is none other than former Alabama quarterback Paul Tyson. If you are familiar with him, then you know exactly which direction this video is going. He is the great-grandson of former Alabama coaching legend Bear Bryant. But in order to understand why Tyson would leave his Alabama roots for Clemson, we need to go through and tell the whole Tyson story. In his early years, Paul had Alabama in his blood, as obviously his great-grandfather was the legendary Bear Bryant. From a young age, Tyson would have huge shoes to fill, and he fell in love with the Crimson Tide. His family had season tickets at Bryant-Denny Stadium and were in row 1 of the south end zone. Paul cheered for the Tide in 7 national championship games and was on the sideline for 2 others. He said having his great-grandfather be Bear was cool, but it didn't faze him. He said, quote, "Honestly, I embrace my great-grandfather. That's something that was put in my life, and it's a great honor to have. I make the most of it, and while pressure does come with it, it doesn't faze me. There are a lot of Alabama fans who want me to do well, and I go out there and perform. Yes, it's a lot of pressure, but I'm going to take that in, and it's going to push me to get even more." So, how would Paul end up doing in high school? Well, he went to Hewitt-Trussville High School and became a starter there as a junior. He was really good, as he had back-to-back 3,000-plus yard seasons, which made him a national recruit. Him, offensive lineman Pierce Quick, and wide receiver Dazzlin Worsham became a big three in the area, and they were all going to play high-level college football. At one point, all 3 of them were actually committed to the Crimson Tide, and they were a show to watch each and every Friday night. Tyson blew up as one of the best quarterbacks in the country and eventually became an Elite 11 finalist, was named a top 10 quarterback recruit, and had 4 stars next to his name. But that wasn't his best attribute. Tyson's coach always admired how Paul always elevated his team in every sport. Marty Rozelle, his coach, said, quote, "Everybody always says he can't do this or he can't do that, but I've watched him in park leagues from the time he was in 1st grade all the way up. He's never lost, and his teams always won championships in all sports every year." Tyson would eventually go down as a legend in the state, as he finished as the 2nd all-time completion percentage quarterback in Alabama high school football history, as he had a 68% mark and also passed for 7,695 yards and 78 touchdowns. The guy was obviously a legend, but where was he going to go to college? Well, as much as it seemed extremely obvious, he did at least consider some other schools. He eventually committed to Alabama over Kentucky, LSU, Notre Dame, and Michigan. He finally came out and said, quote, "I've enjoyed the recruiting process and have really tried to be open-minded. It came down to Coach Key, Coach Enos, and Coach Saban asking me to commit now. I felt the same calling that my great-grandfather had when he was asked to come home, and Alabama is home, and that's where I want to spend my college career." He was going to be joining teammate Pierce Quick at Bama, and Tide fans were pumped to have the home state legacy on the roster. But many wondered, was his great-grandfather the only reason he got that Tide offer? Well, no. He was a legitimate quarterback either way, but Saban did add another legacy quarterback in that same class. Taulia Tagovailoa was also a big-time player in the state of Alabama, and he joined his older brother Tua in committing to the Tide. Tyson, though, was not concerned about this. He said, quote, "Me and Taulia are good friends. We both know if you're going to Alabama, you've got to compete. There's probably going to be some guys behind us coming up too." Obviously, Paul had a good mindset, and after a terrific career, scouts were super high on him and thought there was a chance he could one day become a star for the Tide. Except the Tide had a lot of good players around him. Scouts were still high on him though, as according to 24/7 Sports, Tyson was a 4-star recruit, the number 12 pro-style quarterback, and the 321st best player in the class of 2019. So, how would the Bama legacy end up doing at Tuscaloosa? Well, it didn't really go according to plan, but to be fair, there was a lot of depth around him. In his time with the Crimson Tide, he'd play alongside Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, Bryce Young, and Taulia Tagovailoa. He truly got a chance to compete and learn from some of the best quarterbacks in college football at the time, and at some point, all 4 of those guys are going to be in the NFL. Unfortunately for Tyson though, Mac, Tua, and Bryce were just way too much for him to overcome. Mac was a 3-star recruit back in the day who blew up and got drafted in the first round, and both Tua and Bryce were 5 stars, so I guess I'll give him a pass for not being able to beat them out. Eventually, after holding the clipboard for a couple of years, he decided to enter the transfer portal. Tyson came out on social media and said, quote, "It was a lifelong dream of mine to play at Alabama. I am about to graduate, and I have entered the transfer portal to continue to play football and continue my education. I always treasure the experiences and friendships over the past years, and the University of Alabama will always hold a special place in my heart." So where would Tyson end up going? Well, after leaving Bama, his dad did a ton of research for schools that might need quarterback help. The list included 30 possible fits for Paul. Arizona State did not make the initial cut, but once the Sun Devils reached out, Mark Tyson got to thinking. He always loved Coach Herm Edwards, and the Sun Devils staff had a ton of pros there, and they could help take Paul to the next level. Add in the fact that the family loved Phoenix, and they decided he was going to go to Arizona State. He chose the Sun Devils over Missouri and Notre Dame, and said, quote, "I was most impressed on my visit with how great the people are. Everyone was so welcoming, and the coaches and the players were just awesome. I took other visits and checked out other places, and this was the visit I enjoyed the most." When Tyson ended up committing to ASU, he was going to be the 5th guy on the roster behind Finn Collins, Jaden Daniels, Trenton Bourguet, and Dalen McLemore. Dominoes weren't done falling though, as Daniels would leave for LSU, and Florida transfer Emory Jones would come in. Ultimately, Tyson would end up being the 3rd string quarterback behind Trenton and Emory Jones, and didn't really leave much of an impact to ASU. Last season, Tyson would appear in 5 games, but never got any meaningful snaps. He played against Miami, Mercer, Southern Miss, New Mexico State, and Auburn, going 10 of 16 for 150 yards without an interception or a touchdown. Trenton Bourguet would end up taking over the starting job by the end of the season, and with Herm Edwards eventually getting the boot, they decided to bring in Kenny Dillingham. Dillingham was one of the top young offensive coordinators in the country after doing wonders with Bo Nix and the Oregon offense. He took the head coaching job, and it looked like he was going to have his own guy. Tyson ended up entering the portal again, and this time he made a somewhat puzzling move on paper. He decided to transfer to Clemson. Not only nationally are Clemson and Alabama big-time rivals, but why would he go there when he had no chance to play? Well, Coach Dabo Swinney said, quote, "We were honest with him and we were transparent. I wasn't looking for a guy to come in here and be the starter. We think we already have that. But we needed an older guy who has been through a lot of game plans and a lot of practices. Somebody who's got a level of maturity to him, a Hunter Johnson-like player. That's what we needed." Ultimately, it looks like Tyson is joining Clemson because he wants to be a part of a winning program, he wants to help younger players, and he wants to follow in his great-grandfather's footsteps. He wants to be a coach. Dabo also said, quote, "He had a lot of Group of 5 opportunities, and he had one really good SEC opportunity, but I think for him, he values who we are, and he's a guy who wants to coach at one point." That right there is everything you need to know. Paul Tyson wants to be a coach like his great-grandfather, and has given up on the idea of starting in college or playing in the NFL. He knows his next step in life, and that's why I'm not opposed to this move at all. While some headlines like this video will talk about how this is unthinkable or unimaginable or crazy, ultimately I think this is going to be the best move for Tyson, and if worse comes to worse, his number will be called if injuries happen or things don't go the team's way. And maybe Paul Tyson will become a Clemson legend, but for now, I look forward to the day when we see him coaching on the sidelines. That right there is the Paul Tyson story and what ultimately happened to him. And be sure to give me your thoughts on today's video. If you're a Clemson, Bama, or ASU fan, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what player I can cover in my next video. And before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.